Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, everyone, to Black Man Speak. I'm your co host, VJR Stewart.
And I'm your co-host, Tommy D. Duncan III, otherwise known as TD3. It is Wednesday night, June the 24th, 2026. And if it's Wednesday night,
It's certainly Black Man Speak. So let's give a shout out to Forest Films in our own studio for supporting our show, The Pesky Fly. And if you haven't already, please hit that notification bell, like button, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to help us out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you're here watching the show live, invite a friend, a family member, a coworker, a neighbor, a friend of me, just so you guys have something interesting to talk about for the rest of the week. With that being said, Tom, let's do what we do best, which is bring information about what's going on in the world to social media.
all
What
right.
say you?
All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started tonight. And for the first time in quite a while, we do not have any condolences and prayers to offer this week. I'm not going to say that nobody have passed of the last week, but no one that is high profile that has hit the news and the airwaves. So we definitely want to make sure that we give kudos to everyone out there who may have folks who are in their hospital beds or supporting and taking care of families. And of course, whenever we do have someone, we will definitely acknowledge them. Looks like we have someone in the chat line. Cousin Audrey K is in the chat line. I want to thank her for joining us this evening. And
Okay.
good evening to you as well, Cousin Audrey K, and thank you for showing up as well. So, why don't we go ahead and start probably with what may be a short conversation? I know we have a couple of pretty meaty stories going up, but yesterday was the NBA draft, JR, and I didn't really spend a bunch of time really watching the NBA draft. I was just kind of checking out who picked who, when, where, and why. And I know that you're a big Mavericks fan, so one figure we start talking about the NBA draft and what the implications are, given that we just came off the NBA Finals, and then we can go into our stories.
Well, Tom, I don't pay too close of attention to the drafts. I like to give it a year or two, let it marinate before I can evaluate whether it's a good draft or not. So I know everybody gets excited about potential of players, but potential is like what your teacher used to tell your parents. You got potential. That means you weren't cutting the mustard, Tom. You weren't making the grades, even though they figured you could. So I'm going to wait and get through the season. So I'll tell you about this year's draft next year when we've seen what this new guy can do. These two new
So, so,
players.
so does that mean that you can tell us what the results are from the draft 3 years ago? Is that what you're trying to say? You want
That's
to
what I'm
tell
trying to
us
say, Tom. For football, it generally takes 2 or 3. It takes about 3 years, 4 years in football. But in basketball, generally you can tell whether you've had a good draft or not after one season. So they
Okay, so
drafted two. Go ahead.
go ahead and tell us about how last year's draft panned out then.
Well, I mean, we got Cooper Flag, so um, that it panned out pretty well as far as I could see. I mean, they didn't win that many
Well, not as
games,
far
but
as not as far as what does it work?
well, I mean, still you got a building block. You have somebody you can build around. Since we lost Luca, I mean, he's a young kid, 19, just turned 20, so he's going to have a nice long career. He finally came into his own towards the end of the season, and so he's a legitimate baller now, man. So he's a threat. I mean, he should be able to average 25 to 30 a game for the upcoming season. So, and if you get a few players around him, the Mavericks' problem is the third quarter and they just can't seem to score consistently in the third quarter. Um, they're okay for the first half. And they're almost like San Antonio for in that matter. San Antonio every quarter their shooting percentage goes down, and by the fourth quarter they're just hanging on for dear life sometimes. So if you can get into a shooting match with them, then you can beat them. So the Mavs have the scoring problems in the third quarter, and then they fight like hell to get back into the game in the fourth quarter. And sometimes there's just not enough clock left for them to win the game. So hopefully, with a couple of new players around, Cooper Flag and some veterans coming back, we'll see what happens.
Well, Jimmy, we'll definitely see what happens. They picked up a forward slash center out of Michigan, Morez Johnson.
Never
And
heard of him.
yeah, he is more of a defensive guy. Very strong rebounding, got some muscle, I guess, on the in the front court, and so I think they really picked him as more of a defensive presence. around what you would call the centerpiece, which is Cooper Flag. Not really a high scoring guy at Michigan, but 13 points per game, 7.3 rebounds per game, about a little bit over 60% field goals. And so I think they were looking for someone who's going to be a little bit more.
Tom, 13 points a game get you drafted in the top 10.
Well, they had a number 9 pick, so obviously so he had to be doing something pretty significant on defense to be picked, unless you're saying that this new head coach for the Mavericks or the general manager is a bonehead.
Tom is saying 13 points get you a top 10 draft pick, get you in the top 10 with 13 points a game.
That is
That's
what
almost as bad as LeBron James with his 4 points being drafted in the second round.
that is what your new regime for the Dallas Mavericks picked because they drained the swamp. They got rid of the GM. They got rid of the coach, They got rid of Nico Harris because he was doing such an awful job. They got rid of Jason Kidd. I don't know why, other than the fact that they wanted to eliminate anyone associated with the Luka trade. And so they now got a new regime, and they picked their first draft of the new head coaching and GM regime, and they picked a guy who was a defensive player.
Okay.
So I mean,
Well, it seemed like we had some big men who can on the inside with Lively and I can't think of the other center that plays. They call him the landlord. But anyway, it seemed like we had some pretty good rim protectors. Um,
if they can stay
Offensive,
healthy,
huh?
if they can stay
Well,
healthy, because I know
if
they
they can
were
stay
going out.
healthy.
Right.
So, like I said, their problem is third quarter scoring. Teams go off the deep end and they can't get it done. So hopefully, I don't know if Kyrie's coming back or they've been talking about trading him. Um, so we'll see what happens. But if they can get some consistent scoring in the third quarter, they're not a bad team. So they can make a run and they can
Well,
do some damage.
this is the question. Didn't they just sign Kyrie? What is it, 1 or 2 years ago to a pretty hefty contract that they're on the hook for?
Yes, but if there's somebody out there willing to trade for him, we'll see what happens. They may want to get out from under that money.
Well, I would say this: they're still on the hook for it. And how if you found a team that one ball handler away from getting to the championship, maybe. But I mean, Kyrie is in his what early
Early
mid 30s
30s,
now.
yeah,
Uh,
early 30s.
Hefty on the contract side has had some injury problems, and how many teams are going to be prepared to take a risk on that with a player with that type of injury history and or age on him?
Well, that is true, and so that's the gamble now. So, and if you trade him, you may have to eat some of the contract yourself and pay some of it because
You know,
his new team may not want to eat that whole contract. So, um, but it would free you up some money in salary cap if you want to use that money to go get another player.
yeah, yeah. We'll see what happens again. They drain the swamp. They said they start from scratch. Uh, and you, Jimmy, by your facial expressions, you seem to be a little bit
Well,
underwhelmed
Tom,
by
you know
this
what?
draft.
If you drain the swamp, if you want to start over with a fresh sheet and you go out and get a bunch of young players and let them all develop, like back in the day when Michigan with their Fab Five, when I got five freshmen, all you know basketball All Americans and started them. If you want to let them grow and develop that way, and just throw everybody into the frying pan at the same time, let them develop, sort of like San Antonio did, then that's fine. But when you only add a piece here and a piece there and trying to develop, you're gonna always be in development mode, and you'll be okay, but you won't be good enough to win a championship. So um, either you're going to go all in and just spend a lot of money on a bunch of really good veterans, or you're going to go all in with a bunch of young players and let them develop, and hopefully they develop all at the right time so they can compete. Anything in the middle there is just what it is.
Well, it seemed to work out for San Antonio. They didn't win a
And when I got
championship,
a
but
lot of young
considering what
players at one time, so and let them develop. They put them
yeah,
out there and they make mistakes, but young players are supposed to make mistakes. But like you said, they were able to make it to a championship,
that's more than 30 other teams did.
including the Mavericks.
So absolutely, the Mavericks ain't nowhere close. Mavericks ain't nowhere close, and if the Mavericks even thinking about it, they've got to get past San Antonio. They've got to get past
Oklahoma,
the Houston.
Denver,
Got to get past Oklahoma City. They've got to
the
get past
Clippers, the
Denver.
Lakers.
They
They a lot of really
exactly.
Minnesota,
Uh,
um, and I mean even Portland
yeah,
is coming up, man. And so you got a lot of teams in the West that you got to try to get by to come up out of this conference. So
yeah. So good luck to the Mavericks on that one because they've got some very young and talented teams, in addition to some more seasoned, experienced teams out there with some championship pedigree. To your point, like Denver and a couple of other teams, and I think actually a couple of other younger teams that are probably just extremely talented. Not just San Antonio, but you've got Houston. You've got a couple of other teams that are very good. I mean, Golden State is kind
so
of in the
Tom, are
shadow,
we
in
seeing
my
a new
opinion.
age now, man, where everybody's going to try to go younger? I mean, players like LeBron and Durant and some of the older players, man, that were in high demand just a few years ago. It doesn't seem like there's much of a market for a $50 million, 40-plus-year-old player anymore.
Well, no. I mean, LeBron went to LA, I think, for business and personal reasons. I don't think Luca is going to be the one that's going to help them lift the trophy at the championship level. I mean, Luca could be involved with it, but I don't believe he's going to be the one that's going to actually carry the team, given his injury history, given his history of coming into the season out of shape that contributes to him always being injured every year. So LeBron maybe has another year or so. He's in, quite frankly, better shape than Luca year by year himself. So I don't know. When you talk about KD, when you talk about LeBron, when you talk about at this point even someone like Kyrie, it's about turning over the torch right now,
So, do you
in
think
my
teams are going
opinion.
to look at San Antonio and say, "Hey, maybe we can do what they did, just go draft and get a lot of young players, man, and just start over"?
I think San Antonio was kind of anomaly because most of these players are trying to do it through acquisition and Oklahoma City and San Antonio seemed like more of an anomaly to me. Now, maybe some teams will learn from that. Oklahoma City, I think, has a bigger fish to fry given what happened to them in the semifinals, given that they have a number two player that completely crapped out.
Tom, they got a 1 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6. They don't have a number two. He got exposed for being a fake number two. I mean, people try to paint him as a 1B. He's not even a 1B, Tom. He's not even a two. So, when
Yeah.
you scoring 4 points in the finals and you're about to be eliminated and you can't even get a shot in the second half, yeah, there's something wrong with that. But yeah, that's for another time. What's our next story, T?
Let's talk a little bit about politics,
Politics. Okay,
Jimmy.
we don't cover politics too
Yeah, we're
often.
both in. No, we don't by design, and a lot of folks who do that. So and we won't talk hard politics, but since we're in the state of Texas, it looks like the GOP is seeking to they're suing to close the primaries. For those of you who vote on the primaries, probably not that many people. You know that typically when you're voting there, you choose a ballot, either the Republican or the Democratic ballot, and or you either choose one, and then of course, even if you are an independent. Republican or Democrat, you have the option to choose. Now, what the GOP is seeking to do now is to sue in order to have to register and declare a specific party and then vote in that specific primary so that you don't have an option as to which to vote when you're voting in the primaries in particular. And just to be clear, this is not in the general election in November, this is in the primary.
Right. So I did look at the article you sent, and so I do understand the logic behind it, what they're trying to do. Tom, we know that the Democrat Party has been trying to flip Texas for a very long time, since Governor Ann was here, and they flipped Republican. Yeah,
And Rich,
since they flipped Republican, they've been trying to flip it back to Democrat column for a long time, and sometimes races are fixed by people jumping ship. Democrats voting in Republican primaries or Republicans voting in Democrat primaries because they want to vote for the weaker person to go up against their candidate. So by forcing people and locking them into a Republican or a Democrat primaries where you can't jump ship once you declare, then that will keep a lot of that. trying to fix elections from happening. So that way, if you got five Republicans running and the fifth one is the weakest one, the Democrats can't jump ship because they have a Democrat who's running unopposed. So it doesn't matter who votes for him, but they go vote for the weakest Republican to try to get him in the lead. So their candidate.
Jimmy, you trying to say there's some weak Republican candidates that'll
Oh
be
yeah,
pushed
Tom.
out?
Of course there are a lot of them, man. And so this would just add a little integrity by forcing people to stay in their own lane. Democrats stay in the Democrat lane, Republicans stay in the Republican lanes, and there's no attempting to fix elections by boasting up a candidate that the people really don't want.
Well, I mean, wouldn't that be both ways? I mean, because in a lot of cases, you have a lot of Republican candidates that are probably going unopposed as well. So, I
Oh, it
mean,
happens with
it
yeah,
could
on
be
both
either
sides. I
way.
mean, if you have a Republican going unopposed, it's not uncommon for his supporters to go vote for the weakest Democrat out there. So to maybe get them into the general election, so their candidate would have an easier chance of beating someone who's doesn't have a good apparatus around him, doesn't have much money, doesn't have much name recognition, but all of a sudden he's at the top of the vote count um, because the Republicans jumped ship and voted for him because their candidate was going to win anyway. So it happens both ways. But this is just put an end to a lot of that. So
Yeah, well, I mean, it just sounds interesting to me that the GOP, and it obviously, Texas is a red state with, a couple of blue counties in it on the most part. So I don't know why the Republicans would feel intimidated or threatened in any way by having to change what the dynamics are of voting. And this is again specifically for primaries. We're not talking about the general elections in November.
well, like I said, Tom, it's just to bring some integrity to the whole system. So so we don't have fixed elections. So if the people of Texas get a true candidate that they want from their side, without having to worry about whether the person that's in the general election was somebody that the Republicans or the Democrat truly wanted.
Well, that's pretty interesting, Jimmy. You bring up politics and integrity and fixing elections in this day and age. One wouldn't think that there would
Oh,
be such a
Tom,
thing as trying to
there's a
fix
lot of
it.
election fixing going on. Still,
Yeah,
I mean,
see,
we still get
yeah.
Disney characters voting every year. We get dead people voting. We're still on the rolls every year. Every election, not every year, but every election. So yeah, there are a lot of roles with people that are 200 years old still on the damn voting rolls, still voting every election. So
Well, Jimmy, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see a 200-year-old person. I don't think I've ever seen that, heard that. If you can find me the evidence of a 200-year-old person, please
okay,
send
I
that to
will.
me because I
I
haven't
would do that.
I haven't quite a 200-year-old
They
person
have
voting in
people who
election.
are over 20 years old still in the voting rolls and voting. Somehow be able to get
Well,
a
that,
now the sometimes the election the votes are caught and not counted, but they're still voting somehow. So especially in states where they mail out ballots to everyone, so you can mail your ballots in and just drop them off. Lots of cheating, especially like states like California. Dead people vote out there all the time.
well, you wouldn't think that would be an issue in the state of Texas, but obviously you have a bunch of dead people voting in a red state.
What's our next story, T?
All right, next story, Jimmy, and this is also a little bit political, but related to sports. Of course, we've talked probably over the last couple of years, not ad nauseum, but a little bit about what's going on with the changing in the guard of college sports, in particular with NIL. Back in the day when we were in school, Jimmy, you got that scholarship in whatever sport it was, and you know you. You got your school paid for, but you could not make money.
Right,
The
you couldn't
school
work.
and the institution, exactly. You literally could
Right.
not work, and you could literally not be able to afford a pair of shoes or to go out and get a burger. But you had hundreds of millions of dollars being made by the institution, of course, until NIL. And so, as a result of that, you have players, especially in the big ball sports, that being football and basketball, who are getting significant contracts. And quite frankly, you have players who probably will never make it in the league, who are making money hand over fist at the college ranks. Well, there is now a bill that has been put out to try to federalize. the guidelines around NCAA sports, controlling revenue, how much teams they can make. Right now, it's kind of a state to state thing, Jimmy, but now they're looking at federalizing the guidelines and the rules. And of course, there's pushback from the big sport conferences like the SEC and the Big Ten. But it's an interesting dialogue. One of the big concerns, of course, from the other side is that some folks feel that they're trying to contain how much money that the student athletes are making, especially considering how much money the institutions have made over the years.
Tom, I see it from both sides, man, and I never really liked the current formula. I don't like the portal system. Too many players moving around. Now with the NIL money, too many players chasing dollars, but you can't blame them. If you get a chance to make millions of dollars playing college ball, who wouldn't take that deal? But the problem is that for me, for a fan who just wants to see good quality college football every damn Saturday, you look up and a player plays with Alabama today, and next year he's on some other team, and the year after he's on another team, and there's just no consistency anymore. And so every year,
Well, the
everybody's having to rebuild teams and with whatever players they can scrape up and pay. Um, but on the payment system, I had hoped that when I knew college was going to get to that point where they're going to start paying players, we knew that was happening. But
of
I
course,
was hoping,
and it's been
yeah,
happening.
some of it was just under the
It
table.
never it never didn't happen, but it was just happening under the surface. So when you have people, I will leave some folks nameless, but folks who have won several championship and coaches complaining about the current system because they are losing their parity when they had control and dominance in a league for decades upon decades, and now they're crying and whining about a new system because they don't have as much control in terms of being able to maintain
I'm
their
one of them,
talent and
Tom.
their
I'm
power.
crying too, man, because it's disrupting the quality. I'm a big Alabama fan. You guys know that, and under this new system, Alabama's not doing too well. They players come in, players go out.
They're still competing, Jimmy. I mean, they're not the bottom of the barrel, Jimmy. They're just not winning every year.
Tom, when have you known the Alabama team that was losing 4 games in a season? Now, come on. Somebody. I mean, he had to roll, literally roll, for a coach to lose four. Even Saban couldn't get away with losing 4 games in a season and keep his job. So, but
Well,
on the money side, Tom, I really hoped that they would even the money out and pay everybody this exact same dollar amount. You know, some kind of little stipend, a couple $100 a week, whatever, just so you have some money. And you're not a poor broke college kid. You can at least go home, buy a meal on the weekend, do something. But the way it is now, Tom, the big schools and the boosters being able to raise money and pay out millions of dollars. The small schools, especially HBCUs, can't pay anything. When you look at the top 100 paid players in college, I go down the list. Tom, there's some small schools on there, but there's no HBCUs. Like, wait a minute, what's wrong with this?
well, the HBCUs have never been able to compete, probably since before NCAA sports were integrated. And I'm not going to say they never will be able to, but the reality of it is HBCUs will never be able to compete with the Big Ten, with the SEC, with the larger conferences. That I'm not going to say it never will happen, but it won't happen anytime soon. And the reality of it is, there are some folks who are of the mindset that, you know what, it's good to see some new teams. I mean, when was the last time you saw Indiana in a championship game? They had a quality team and they ran the
Tom,
gamut.
they ran under the radar for me. 'Cause, I mean, I kept seeing them rise up in the polls from nowhere, and but it was like Indiana. Come on, they're not. That's a basketball school. That's not a football school.
No, they're that good.
And I
You're
didn't pay
correct.
attention to them to the playoffs. And when they got to the playoffs, like, wait a minute, this team is really good. They have a good defense. Um, I was like, man, I'm impressed. So, but and I don't know if they snuck up on people, but yeah, they were really that good. And it's
I don't believe people really thought they were that good until they got, excuse my language, until they got their asses whooped by them. I don't think they really. But Jimmy, think about this. You had Indiana and Miami. When was the last time Miami was in the hunt
right. It's been
too?
a while since the early 2000s, the 90s, when Jimmy Johnson was there, and what was the coach from they got from Washington? Erickson, I think was his name, who took over for Jimmy.
Yeah,
Dennis Erickson,
Dennis
yeah.
Erickson. And so in certain ways, I'm not going to say that the current regulations regarding payer, what I would call equity, within the NCAA is void of any flaws. But I will say this: I think it's better for the game when you have more teams that are involved and are competitive. And people get tired of seeing the same team win practically every 2 or 3 years, win a championship, and you have only 2 or 3 teams. Your Alabama, your Ohio State. You may have a third or fourth
The
around there
Georgia,
someplace
the
winning
Notre Dame,
practically.
the Penn States, yeah.
Exactly. Or you only have SEC, so you only have Alabama or LSU or one of those teams who are in the top four. So if you have a top four or a Final Four in the football, usually two, maybe three are coming from the
True.
SEC. I think people get tired of seeing that, and there are some people who actually like seeing some new faces and some new teams in the game. As far as the payer play is concerned, I don't know. I would not agree with paying everybody the same because, quite frankly, you're gonna play a cornerback the same as a quarterback. I don't think anybody's. I don't know too many people who are gonna agree
But Tom, you're not
with
you're not paying for the
paying.
skill position. It's really a stipend. You're really just paying like if you work and you travel for your company, they pay you a per diem rate. So that's really what it is. This is just for incidental, so you can buy some meals, so you can go to the movies, you can get your clothes clean. So this is not necessarily a paycheck for your position. So let's get the pay out of it, and let's just call it a stipend. We're just going to pay you so you have some money in your pocket. Since you can't get a part-time job or you can't work on campus, we'll give you $200-300 a week and put in your pocket.
No, that ain't gonna cut it. Especially not in the government for Jimmy. I mean, Jimmy, you being a capitalist, how are you talking? I've never seen a capitalist talk as anti-competitive as you're
Tom,
talking
it's
right
not
now.
okay. I
You
am a
want you
capitalist,
you
Tom,
you
but
as
it is not fair that a few schools get to spend millions of dollars. And like I say, even Division III schools, when you look at the top list of the 100 top paid players, there's some Division II and Division III players on that list. But there are no HBCU schools on that list, Tom.
you're correct,
None. It's like
and you know
do they not have money to
you're
pay players either? And if they don't, well, maybe the money should just be spread out among all the players. Come up with one big pot of money, $1 billion, half a billion, whatever it is. How many players do you have? And just divide it equally and send the checks out.
Well, you brought up HBCUs a couple of times, and if you want to deal with HBCU competitive, you got to deal with state legislatures. And when we look at where the majority of our HBCUs are, you have several of them in the South, you have several of them in the East. Most of them have been criminally underfunded in the order of hundreds of millions to billions of dollars for decades upon decades. And so they're not going to have the infrastructure, they're not going to have the facilities, they're not going to have the support. Even kids who want to go to HBCUs, when they're having to compete with the funding level and the support that you get at PWIs, they're going to tragically be less competitive. Now, the good news is you have a lot of students who are going to these schools in spite of that. But the overwhelming talent is going to go for the money. And that means students too who are not even athletes.
Well, unfortunately, that is true. But it's definitely has caused a lot of turmoil in college sports with players moving from team to team just every year. I mean, nobody sticks around and plays for 3 years in one school anymore. It's one and done.
And that honestly is a greater reflection in college football and basketball down now than it is even in the NFL. Obviously, for those of you who watch professional sports, you understand that it was, back in the up probably through the 90s, teams were built through the draft from the inside out. And, it took a long time to build the chemistry on the team to win championship. You have teams who are a couple of players away. That's been put on steroids in college. But this is the difference that I think that, Jimmy, you have to deal with. In college sports, what, maybe 1% play any significant time in the big leagues in the NFL?
Right.
Which means,
True.
unlike going to the pros, once you get there, you're going to average maybe 3, possibly 4 years before you have to figure out something else. In college sports, you have 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 years from some of the way some of these guys are playing now, and you got to make your money then because at the end of the day, after you get out of your college years, you are not going to make any money because 99% of the players are not going to make a short career out of sports. And so they're trying to maximize the money that they can because for some of them, It could be family altering money.
And it is. A lot of them is just true because you
Family,
may never get another chance to make that kind of money again.
because majority, 99% of them are not going to do it in the pros.
True. So,
So,
okay, well, it is what it is. Let's see how the team's surviving in this new paradigm, new rules.
and
Uh,
I will say this, understanding that the current guidelines changed from state to state, maybe. And obviously, the NCAA is kind of the governing body on all of this. And, we had this conversation, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, Jimmy, about the quarterback from Texas Tech, Sorsby, who somehow, after betting on his own doggone team, which isn't what I want to say, was allowed to go back and play until he literally got blackballed into going into the supplemental draft. We'll see how this thing works out. But I would say this. I think if we're in a capitalist country, this anti-capitalist philosophy, when it comes to people whose talents is only going to take them a couple of years in their life, there's going to have to be a reckoning on that.
well, there is a reckoning, Tom. So you're correct in that respect. Okay, so what's our next story, T?
Next story, we haven't talked about anything in terms of international and or geopolitics in quite a while. And I came across an interesting story. It looks like the
You got a little bit of echo going there, Tom.
okay. Can you hear echo on my side?
Yes.
I
Maybe it's just I don't know
might
if it's just me or is it everybody.
I am not exactly sure, but it looks like the African and Caribbean leaders met in Ghana recently, Jimmy, and among one of their agenda items is organizing around seeking reparations from countries that have benefited from the African slave trade, have left their economies on the most part in shambles, not able to compete on the global front. And I know that this has happened before in terms of campaigning for reparations for countries that still control them to this day, politically, economically, and otherwise. I know you have your opinions on it, but I thought it was worth talking about for a few minutes at a broader level.
Well, Tom, okay. I just think that it's shameful that African leaders do such a horrible job at providing leadership for their people in their countries. So um, they're going to forever be on their knees begging European, white people, West, and even Asian people for freedom and for money because they just refuse to do the right thing towards their people.
What does
They'd
that
rather
look
put
like to
money.
you? What does that look like to
Was
you when you say doing the right thing?
To me, the major problem with many African countries is tribalism. There are far too many tribes. For instance, and the tribes are all fighting for control of the country and the resources and the money that comes from those resources. So, if my tribe's in power, then my tribe, my friends, the tribal leaders, they all benefit. Everybody else catch hell, until they overthrow me and another tribe comes to power, and then they get the spoils of war. And this goes on as internal fighting, and so there's no sense of nationalism in many of these African countries because everything is about the tribe. The tribe is the most important entity there, not the national country. And so long as tribes are fighting each other for control and don't give a damn about anyone outside of their tribe, they just when you come to power, you make sure that you and yours are taken care of, and the hell with everyone else, which is a shame because in a lot of these tribes, Tom. Not that I'm the foremost expert on Africa, I'm not, but when we had a previous host on here, he challenged me to go out and learn more about Africa, which I did. And so these are some of the things I discovered. Tom, you have a small country of 8 million people with 40 tribes that all speak 40 different languages, not 40 dialects. 40 different languages. Imagine trying to bring a country together when you have 40 different languages that people speak there. And like I said, everybody's is loyal to their tribe, and the hell with everybody else if you're outside the tribe. So there's no sense of nationalism or getting things done on a national level, which is why it's hard to build freeways and railroads and airports and trade regionally and then within the continent. So As a result, they're always behind the eight ball. They're always slickered behind the eight ball when it comes to economics. And a lot of them that have resources, Tom, they have some wealth. God knows what they do with their money. I mean, they're still on their knees begging. Nigeria is one of the richest countries as far as money coming in from oil trade. I mean, they're an OPEC nation. They used to be the fifth wealthiest OPEC country for oil development in the world. Now they're like 10th or 11th, but they still, you're talking about $3 or $4 million a day in revenue from oil sales. How are you still on your knees having to beg and get grants from the U.S. to build wells so your people can have fresh water in your country when you make $400 million a day? Something doesn't seem right here. But Nigeria is another prime example with hundreds of different tribes there, and every tribe is fighting for control of the country and the resources and the money. And so, if your tribe is in power, then life is great for you. If it's not, then you're catching hell. And so I don't see how blaming white people, blaming European powers, blaming the slave trade, which they participated in, then somehow you want reparations when you're the ones who captured and sold slaves, but you not want to be paid for your crime and your criminal act against humanity. I'm not kind of understanding that one. And your economies are in shambles. Not because Western powers have crippled them. Western powers have no responsibility to build up your economy. You have a responsibility to build up your economy. And when you look at countries like Japan, who was devastated after World War II, who's now an economic power. Um, Taiwan, who split out from China after World War II, is now a major economic power. In fact, Taiwan brings in more money than all of the sub-Sahara countries in the continent of Africa. Uh, you look at countries like Italy, Germany, Japan. Um, countries like that don't have an army, don't have a military, they have a defense force, but still the U.S. defends them and protects them, and they devote their attention towards developing their country, providing social services, and building their country up. African countries need to stop fighting with each other, Tom. Stop focusing on building the military. If you sign a deal with the Russians or Chinese or the Americans to protect you, do so. But then take your resources and develop it internally for the benefit of your people, not the benefit of your tribe.
There is a lot of what you said I agree with, but it does have some nuances. I believe that the biggest problem that the African continent has is that Europe is intimately involved with every aspect of practically every country on the African continent. After
True.
it went in, took the Bible there, colonized the minds religiously of most of the African country, African people across the continent. If you consider how Europe has underdeveloped Africa by taking its religious and military institutions and destabilizing the country and the people, then in essence, it colonized the minds and the country. And for those of you who probably don't know, there's this thing called the Berlin Conference where the Europeans, of course, without African input, basically sliced and diced Africa into the 54 countries that we know of today for its own benefit, because, of course, there were resources there that European countries wanted. That happened in 1884, by the way. And as a result of that, you're correct in terms of tribalism being a major impediment in practically every country that is in the state of Africa. But the reason that that is an issue is because Europe actually developed that, just like the Europeans in the United States of America did so to the Africans who were brought here in order to build the country. The same thing happened on the continent of Africa. It was just a different model. What am I trying to say here? After Europe went in, determine who was going to get what after fighting each other, because France and Spain and Great Britain, they were fighting each other over the resources and the wealth they were going to make off the African continent. And it's like, well, why are we doing this? Why don't we sit down, draw out what we want, and then what we're going to do is slice this entire continent up, which did not look like that prior to that happening, so that everybody can eat off of this big plate. And that is exactly what they did. And so as a result, all of these tribal affiliations that you were talking about were in harmony. Yeah, there were conflicts, but the reason there's so much tribalism in conflict with nationalism is because that nationalism was created by the Europeans, not the Africans. The Africans did not create Nigeria. They did not create Ghana. They did not create Lesotho. They did not create all of these other countries. The only country, by the way, that was not colonized was Ethiopia. But the rest of Africa had an ebb and a flow to it, and there were tribal issues. Africans, just like Africans in America, were very peaceful people. They were very welcoming people, unfortunately, to a flaw. And when you have warring nations like the Europeans were throughout several centuries as they were rebuilding their economies from the Dark Ages, they saw an opportunity, they exploited it, they took advantage of it, and they're not going to let it go. What does that mean today? Europe has developed all of the constitutions of the African countries for their benefit, number one. Number two, they have destabilized the country to ensure that Africans from these different tribal affiliations stay self-centered so they can continue to ensure that Europeans can maintain control of their countries because the Africans are fighting. I agree with you, Jimmy. The leaders in practically every African country are completely self-motivated. Why? The elections and the politics in practically every African country are determined by the Europeans. What does that look like? They go in, they put some money into the hands of the right people, and they'll give people money, they'll give people bags of rights, they'll do whatever they need to do in order to buy to win their vote. Sometimes that happens in the United States, but it definitely happens on the African continent. And so the people that are going to represent the interests of the European countries are the ones that are elected, and that's all controlled by the European countries. The best thing that can happen is that European can get out of the business of Africa. But that's not going to happen. Why? There's too much money to be made from the resources on the African continent. The Chinese are not there just for the benefit of Africans building infrastructure, building bridges, building roadways. They're doing that to benefit the Chinese because guess what? They got to feed their people too. 1.4 billion people on the Chinese terrain, and all that stuff they're doing over there. Some of it may benefit a few Africans, but on the majority of it, that is not what's going to be happening on the African continent. So the only answer is for the Africans to pull back. They're going to have to deal with some internal battling, just like any other culture does, in order to reestablish their priorities for the Africa that they want to see.
So, Tom,
And
oh,
that
go
is
ahead.
not and that is not particularly going to be in the best interest of Europe. And so, as a result, if and when that does happen, there are going to be a lot of European world leaders and/or institutions who are going to do their best to make sure that they take out anybody who is trying to liberate the African continent and their people from outside
So I will
forces.
give you a 97, which is A plus on that particular speech. Most of what you said is, I say all of it is probably accurate. Um, but there's one thing there, Tom, that's alarming that if the Africans were to do would be cause their downfall. They cannot pull away from Europe. They cannot pull away from the West. And here's why it's a bad idea. Most countries, Tom, have been colonized and victimized by somebody. I mean, even America, even Europe, or even Asia. It wasn't that long ago that India and China wanted the control of the British Empire. And they did not gain their freedom by breaking away from the Brits. They gained their freedom by standing up and developing their own self interest while they continued to connect with the West politically and trade with the West economically. Japan didn't break away from the West after World War II. They are still occupied by the U.S. They're still an occupied nation because of World War II and the treaty they signed and surrendered. Germany is still an occupied nation by the U.S. Italy is still an occupied nation by the U.S. And the point here, Tom, is that breaking away from the wealthiest country in the world is probably not the best solution, but learning to stand up for yourself and develop your own internal resources so you can stand up for yourself economically is the best solution. And trading with those who have the money, if Africa stops trading with the West, who are they going to trade with? The European, I mean, the Asians are not going to invest that kind of money into them. They they basically, if the Asians step in and invest any money in Africa, it's to take advantage, just like the West is, just like everyone else. So you allow yourself to be a victim and to be stepped on. Don't be surprised when people step on you. And it's not until you decide to get up off your knees and stand up that people will stop stepping on you and putting a boot on your neck. So at some point, they have to step up and do the right thing for their people and stop being doormats for the rest of the world. And then hopefully somebody feels sorry for you. Because guess what? No one's going to feel sorry for you. And as far as what you said about destabilizing Africa, yes, that's what the Western powers do. That's what the Eastern powers are doing. Because you destabilize an area, a country enough, they become desperate. They'll take any deal just to get something coming in to be able to feed their people. And it's hard when you're in a desperate state like that to rise up and ever overcome the situation when you're constantly trading valuable resources and getting pennies on the dollars, and people are taking your resources and getting millions for it. So you'll never be able to catch up in that kind of equation. But it's not impossible. It's just very difficult. But you don't do it by pulling away from the West because that would only impoverish them more. So my solution is that they start taking whatever little resources they have, stop buying guns and weapons, sign security deals with whoever you have to secure your country, and then focus all your resources, whatever you have, internally on building schools, hospitals, roads, and improving the quality of life for your people and factories.
Okay, so what I did not say is to not trade, because I think trade is absolutely critical. So if we look at this, there are somewhere maybe 7.5 billion people on the earth, maybe 7.5 to 8 billion people on the earth. 1.4 billion of those people are in China, 1.3 to 1.4 billion of those people are in India, and then 1.4 billion of those people are on the African continent. The United States has 300 million people. Considering the amount of power that the United States has, given the number of people they have, is absolutely extraordinary. But that is because of technology and or dominance and intel, obviously. So my premise would be that what Africa has to do is not pull away from other countries. They're going to have to reimagine and well, no, let me back up. One, they've got to
They
control
do.
their own institutions. No, because no institutions are controlled by
They're not.
Africans in Africa. Not their political institutions, not their religious institutions, not their educational institutions. There is no institution in Africa that is controlled by Africa. What does that mean? You do not control your own destiny. What I'm trying to say is that Africa is going to have to get the Europeans out of their affairs and control their institutions in order to control their destiny. What that looks like economically is that Africa is going to have to stop selling raw products for pennies and nickels to every other country and start selling finished products or very
True.
close to finished products that are value added, that they're going to actually keep more of their money and their margin in their countries, build more jobs, build more economies, and control their destiny. Because what's happening right now is most of these countries, Europe, Africa, the United States, or whomever it is, taking raw products, they're refining them, building finished products, and something that they get maybe 10 or 20 cents from in Africa is being sold for thousands, possibly millions of dollars in the world market. What Africa has to do is build the expertise and the technology to refine and develop complete and or close to complete products and sell those on the market. And I'm not going to say this is a zero sum game, but there are going to be some people who are not going to like that. But the question is, are you going to take care of your people or continue to take care of other people? And that's the decision that these world leaders have to make. Now, this is the point that I'm talking about that points exactly to what you're saying, Jimmy. The reason that most of the leaders on African continent, on African soil, are screwing over their people is because they're well-paid representatives of the European industrial complex, the European military industrial complex or political complex, and so they pay them well enough that they don't really care what happens to the rest of the people because they're getting paid. Their children are going to European and or
True.
American schools. They're getting paid hundreds of millions and or billions of dollars. So they don't really have to care about what happened to millions of other people who live in their own country. And you know what happens? Unfortunately, in most of these other countries, people are so frustrated by the politics that they just put their hands up and give up. They literally give up because they have no security and or trust institutions that develop. They lose because they know it's completely corrupt and not being what they choose are never elected. So they give up. Now, this is the other thing.
Tom, or if they are elected, the elections are rigged. So
Correct.
um, so sometimes whoever the big candidate is somehow, mysteriously, ends up with a few million more votes at the end. Sometimes you have more votes than people when you count them all up. It's hard to win for losing. But so I don't know if there's a simple answer to the problem with Africa, but I do know this: if you look at the northern part of Africa, where most of the Arabs control most of that around Morocco and those areas, Libya, they seem to be a little bit more developed and refined than the sub-Sahara parts, other than South Africa, which is now turned into a third world country in the last 50 years of being black run. But black leaders just don't seem to be concerned about the people. And you're right, a lot of them are well paid. Their kids go to American and Western schools. And when they are driven out of power, what do they run? They take their money and they run to a Western country and live out the rest of their life with them and their friends, their entourage, quite well. And the poor people of Africa just stuck there with the scraps that are left over. But it's not until the people have had enough time and maybe rise up and decide that we're not going to take it anymore, that it probably may hopefully come to an end. But it's hard to rise up against governments today, Tom, because 200 or 300 years ago, people could do that because the military and the people had pretty much the same piece of crap gun, a musket or whatever it was that you were fighting with. Today, military armament is so advanced that people don't have access to it. You can't go buy a tank. You can't go buy a machine gun. You can buy a pistol. You can buy a rifle. But you put your rifle up against a soldier with M16 or a 50 cal machine gun, and he'll mow everybody down. So there's no way the people can uprise anymore. So I'm not sure what the poor people of Africa are going to do, other than hopefully the leaders there just decide that enough is enough, and someone decide to do the right thing.
Well, one thing that I will say that does give me some hope, and we have covered this story. It's been a while since we've talked about what's going on in West Africa and the Sahel states, but you do have those three countries in West Africa, that being Burkina Faso, that being Niger, that being Mali, that decided, you know what, democracy isn't working for the people, and they had someone who had the courage to actually stand up to the politically elected leaders there of the so-called democracy that did not work for Africans, but was put in place by Europeans. It's what the West calls a coup, but the reality of it is it was called a revolution. Now, nobody has a problem with the American Revolution. Nobody seems to have a problem with the
Oh,
French
Tom, I didn't have a
Revolution.
problem with this revolution, except my only concern is that okay, you're doing a good thing. You're turning your resources internally. You paid off your national debt, so you're not under the World Bank's thumb anymore. All great news. You're building roads and infrastructure, schools, all great things. And the three countries are trade within themselves to develop wealth and trade 100% great. My problem is that what happens when those leaders are gone? They're either overthrown or they die or get pushed aside. They may go back to business as usual, and the progress that's made,
Amen.
if it's not codified by the people, or the people just say, "Hey, no, we're not going to go back." We don't care if there's an overthrow, but the next leader got to do the same as the previous leader. But if they don't codify their gains to make it where the people just not going to go back, then it could reverse back in 20 or 30 years, and these leaders are not around anymore.
I think they do what other countries that have been successful at this. One, they do succession planning, but two, they build institutions that are going to outlive them. So it's not building institutions that actually work for the people of that particular country. As I spoke earlier, all of these boundaries that are on the African continent were set up by Europeans that meant Africans no good. And the reality of it is, who are they to say that they are beholden to a group of foreign interlopers who are only there for economic gain, who created artificial barriers that they did not make in order to colonize their people, in order to build their economy? And so the reality of it is, whether they begin to change borders or whether they begin to build and own the institutions for their people that are going to make sure that in the next 100 to 200 years that they're not dependent on having another revolution, I would call it, in order to free their people, to liberate their people so that they can have more jobs, so that they can have a sovereign military, so that they can control their own destiny. Whatever it takes, I think is going to want to have to happen. But that's going to have to start with building systems and institutions that are going to be less dependent on an Ibrahim Traore in order to change. Because the reality of it is, there was someone who preceded him, Thomas Sankara, back in the 70s, who did the same thing.
This is a terrible leader.
Well, he was not a terrible leader. He was doing some of the same things that he was doing. But guess what? When Europe saw he was trying to liberate West Africa, they had him assassinated. Matter of fact, by his best friend.
Okay, but Tommy, still too much corruption in the government, which a lot of that. I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm a big Abraham fan, but I do think he's doing the right thing. But here's the
Enough to
difference,
know.
though. And he has made it clear to friends and family who try to take advantage of position of knowing him and proximity to take advantage of the people. So, and these people are identified, he has had a problem arresting friends and family and throwing them in jail for taking advantage of the people. So he's one of those people that he's not saying, okay, I've done a few good things, so that gives me the right to go over and do some bad things with me and my friends. He's saying, no, I've done a few good things. I'm going to continue to do good things. And even people around me can't do bad things in the name of goodness. So at least he's holding people accountable. So that's why, I'm in favor. If they had 30 or 40 of them around the continent, I'd
Then
be okay. Because
we would not be having this conversation.
Right, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But my concern is, once again, is that what happens when he's gone? If someone is able to assassinate him, is able to push him aside, or he just get old and die, what happens when the next person steps up? It may go back to business as usual the way it was before, and whatever gains that were made may be quickly undone. It doesn't take long. So,
I,
so let's hope. I mean, three nations.
I would say this. He if he is doing the right thing, in my opinion, he is putting the future of the country in the hands of the people. He has literally changed the trajectory of at least that part of West Africa because he is influencing young people across the entire continent with what he's doing, even though there are a lot of young people, older people for that matter, in other countries who are still suffering at the hands of people who have had the presidency in their family for God knows how long, 40, 50 years, and then it goes to the son or the son's hands who's going to do the same thing in terms of exploiting the people. But, if he's doing the right thing, he's going to put the future of the country in the hands of the people. And hopefully, institutionally, the people will do the right thing. That is, elect a leader who is going to continue to carry on that legacy.
Well, he's doing the right thing, Tom. I mean, they have food processing plants, so they're not exporting their raw food. They're processing themselves to feed. They've nationalized the mines. And I mean, they paid off $1 billion in debt that was hanging over their head to the World Bank for a long time. And it wasn't like he robbed it and wanted to get it. They basically, told the people, y'all gonna have to pony up the money. So they sold bonds to the people, their own countrymen, financed the debt. So I mean, he's doing all of the right things economically, development wise. I think they've expanded the airport. Now they actually have some planes that they actually own and money in the bank. With a couple hundred million or at least a couple of $1 billion of cash reserves, which is almost unheard of for a sub-Saharan African country. So he's doing all of the right things for developing his country for the people, building roads, giving out tractors for farming, and becoming self-sufficient. But the biggest thing, Tom, is when you stop taking money from the UN, from the World Bank, and use your resources to grow and develop internally, that's the way you come up, Tom. That's where you have to come up. So other African nations, this is just 354, but the other ones that are find themselves behind the eight ball, trying to come up out of the hole, dealing with the Europeans in the West, are you going to have to do the same thing. You have to look at this as an example and say, hey, this is how they did it, so this is how we can do it. And once you come up out of the hole, now we can start talking about maybe democratizing some things, giving more power to the people, how to codify our gains to make sure we don't go backwards ever in life, how to develop economically, develop the energy that we need to grow. Um, the other thing, Tom, I think I read somewhere that on the world stage, as far as continents are concerned, Africa has very few world patents. Like there's very little few things are invented in Africa, even though we know they have a great deal of knowledge and wealth and ingenuity. It's like where's all that brain trust going? We know Nigeria has some of the best medical schools in the country, but they don't develop medicine. How is that possible? How is there no medical research being done in the country with some of the best medical schools in the world? So it's things like that the development internally is going to have to grow in order for them to come up out of the hole. Because if you keep taking money from the West is going to keep you in a desperate situation so they can make money off of you. They're never going to want you to become a Taiwan. They ever want you to become a Germany, India, or even a China for that matter. It wasn't that long ago that China was under the thumb of Great Britain, and look how they had to crawl out from under that control. So sometimes you got to slowly grow and fight your way out of the hole, Tom, which is what these African nations got to do because you're trying to guilt white people into giving it back. Nah, that's not going to work. It kind of
Yeah,
worked for South Africa, but it's not going to work for the rest of y'all.
but
Unfortunately,
South
I have
Africa's
to.
not, but South Africa's not controlled by Africans. South Africa's controlled by the Dutch.
Well, Tom, I think they tried to they have a black run by the African National Congress for a minute. That didn't quite work out. You got
Especially
brownouts now. The
yeah,
water's dirty.
right.
No development. Economic development stopped. So they haven't had to, and I didn't quite understand this when they said that they turned Johannesburg and the business district over to a council of like all white council to run. But I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't it run by white people before? If
Yes.
that's the case, if it's run by white people before and you push them aside and now you're putting it back in, what was the point of it all? You should have just left it in the hands of white people if that's the case. Um, so I don't have all the answers for them, Tom. I just hope they figure it out. But I know white guilt is not going to get them there. So you're going to have to roll the sleeve up and do it yourself and fight for what you have, invest in yourself, believe in your people, and slowly rebuild your country the way you want it to be. If you want to redefine the borders, rename your country, so you say you had a hand in it, go for it. But you're right. There's not one African country that was named by the African person. Every
Agreed.
one of those names were given to them by Europeans.
Right, and so this is I think a lesson to be learned worldwide. But you're not going to have independence unless you are a sovereign country, and you're not going to have any sovereignty until you control your institutions. And so any country
That's
whose
true.
institutions are controlled by outside forces is not sovereign. So my prayers, man, my prayers and my dreams go to what's going on in the Sahel states becoming more firm, more permanent, and hopefully being able to influence other African countries, because it does influence other Africans throughout the diaspora, whether that be in the Caribbean, whether that be in Brazil, whether that be in the United States of America.
And Tom, look at it. When the nickel, cobalt, lithium, all copper, silver, all the raw materials you need for batteries and to make and silicon to make chips are coming out of a lot of it's coming out of Africa to supply the world. It would only make sense that you would actually build the factories there to put those raw resources together and sell the refined product. You got mega factories going up around the world, except in the one place where all the resources are coming from.
You're
Um,
correct, Jimmy, but that's what Europe does. What they do is they ensure that they can't, or they prohibit them from being able to manufacture and refine their raw resources, because that's what they want Europe to do.
By the time you got to stop
That's
signing deals to
that's
have them
where all
do
the
it for
money,
you.
that's where all the money's made, and so that's why people like heads of states that I will leave nameless, continue to get bribed to make sure that they don't do it.
Yeah. So, well, Tom, that's the capital system, man. Keep people in a desperate state so you can continue to take advantage of them. So, if all of us knew how to bake bread, we wouldn't have to go to the store to bake bread, buy bread, would we? So they make sure we don't have bread makers at home and don't have the inclination to bake our own bread or make our own food. So,
Yeah, so they
um,
can put all the chemicals and toxins in it to make you sick.
Tom, you know what? Speaking of which, we're going to do a food story next week because I just saw a story on how um, the hamburger patties in the stores.
Mhm.
Okay, if by law a beef patty is supposed to have a certain concentration of beef, and you can only have so much water and fillers in it, like 10%, no more than 10%. But if you change it from 100% beef to hamburger meat to 100% beef patty, just change one word patty and take meat out and put patty in. Now you can put now the requirement is on you have to have 50% of beef in it and 50% can be fillers. And so guess what the food companies have done? They changed the labels on our hamburger patties to hamburger patties. They say it's 100%, so you're thinking you're getting all beef. and Tom, you're only getting half a beef. I mean, just once again, what in the world is the other 50% made of? So we should talk about that next week, man. About all these name changes in the food, how they get away with. Sorry about that. My dog's a barker. Dobby, stop. How they get away with changing one word in the food description and fill it with a bunch of non-natural stuff, but claim it's natural and 100%. If I see something say 100% beef patty, I'm really thinking this is 100% beef patty, but it's only 50% beef and it's 50% something else. But that's how they define a beef patty to mean 50% meat. So it's 100% of what we define it as.
One, thank goodness I don't eat beef anymore. And two, I guess you need to start writing your congressman.
Well, another reason, Tom, we buy tons of, we got 30, 40 pounds of beef in my household. Ground,
Either that or you better go in and invest in a farm and
and
raise
man,
your own.
we cut it up ourselves, Tom. We buy the ribeye rolls and we buy whole meat, man. And I get my knives out, I get the butcher my own steaks up, man. And we grind it. We don't grind our meat up. We buy hamburger meat that's grounded. Um, but we have the butcher grind it up for us, man. So, but the point is that Tom, you can't trust a label anymore. And so I'm going to say it again, people. Go back to the the natural foods. Start cooking at home so you know what's in your food, and stop trusting these labels. If you go at the meat section and there's ingredients on the damn label package, leave it there. Because the only thing it should say is meat, chicken, or
And, and,
beef, or
and,
real.
and then they're going to probably redefine what meat is.
Yeah, but if it got 4 or 5 ingredients on that label, and wait a minute, I'm in the meat section. You got ingredients in the meat. Yeah, leave it there. So
And for what it's worth, Jimmy, it's been a while. I saw some well, it wasn't a podcast. It was something talking about it may have been McDonald's or something where they literally make all their meat out of clay and they just kind of form it in fashion into what looks like a hamburger patty. What
oh
looks
yeah, the that chicken patty is one of them. It has the grill marks on it. Tell me, they paint those grill marks on the chicken. How do you paint fake grill marks on chicken
I
to
guess
make it
with
look like
food,
it's grilled chicken?
I guess with
Um,
food
and,
coloring, food coloring.
and every one of those grilled chicken patties look exactly the same, formed exactly. And you're right. It's just grounded up, whatever they want to. They put it into a mold and they paint the stripes on there. And you think you're getting fresh grilled chicken, or chicken breast or something, and all you're getting is
Mm,
processed pieces parts.
fresh grilled clay.
Yes. So yeah, this food thing is getting out of control. I would advocate people start cooking at home, going back to the basics.
And you wonder
Stop
why
eating
so
out.
many people, you wonder why so many people have cancer and diabetes and high blood pressure and all this other kind of stuff.
Tom, one of them. I was one of them from eating all that bad food for many years. I just started getting back on the track in our household of eating healthy. I feel a lot better, man. My weight's coming down. I've gone from 18 different pills a day down to my 3 hard pills, which has been yes. Who you telling, man? So blood pressure under control, diabetes under control, but blood sugar is normal now. But all that's because we don't eat out anymore. Very seldom does the wife and I ever go out to eat. We
For,
cook
for,
at home.
all, for all these other folks who be glamorizing eating out at all these different restaurants.
Don't do it. Cook at home so you know exactly what's going into your food because you prepared it. So, like I said, you can't trust the labels on these foods anymore because even meat's not even meat anymore. It's whatever chemicals and Tom, you talking about the wood chips, and now they have. I didn't realize that there's something called meat glue
Never heard of it.
that even when you go out to eat, that you think this is a porterhouse or a sirloin or a filet mignon steak, and it's just ground up cheap meat that's glued together and shaped into a steak. They have something called meat glue. I ordered some to test it out because I didn't believe it. They sell it on Amazon. Restaurants buy this, so you paying $80 for you think it's a good steak at Ruth Chris or some of Texas Roadhouse, and find out that this is a glued up steak, and you can't really tell the difference, and they're allowed to do that. They actually can sell it as a top steak when this is just spare pieces glued together. Yeah, check it out. It's called meat glue.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's another reason why I don't eat out.
Well, Tom, you should have shared that knowledge with the rest of us years ago, man.
Well,
You
I'm not going to say I never eat out, but I rarely. I mean,
rarely eat out.
there are people who eat out 2 or 3 times a day, and I was just like, I was just doing it to save money. But yeah, that's pretty bad. All right,
So,
folks. Well, it's about 10 after the hour. We have had a good conversation. We want to thank everybody who has joined us for
oh,
this.
did we get anybody in the chat line? Did we need to mention?
No, no, we didn't have any that we had.
Okay, so then cousin Audrey.
Yeah, yeah. I want to thank her for showing up on the chat line. We want to thank everybody for joining us today. Hope you really enjoyed this conversation. You learned something new. Share it with your friends. Oh, okay. Good info. Thank you so much. You said good info, guys. And we will see you on next week. I guess that'll be the first Wednesday of July.
Yes, heading into the fourth, our celebration.
All right,
So,
folks. Y'all
with that
have,
being,
have a great week and weekend because Wednesday, if it is Wednesday night, Jimmy,
it's certainly Black Man Speak.
good night, everyone.